I hadn't planned on being back in town for the summer. College life had its own rhythm: papers, deadlines, roommates who never washed dishes, late-night takeout. I was used to the noise of it, the mess, the motion. So when my dad's work trip turned into a 6-week overseas assignment and my mom decided to tag along, it only made sense to house sit. Cheaper than staying in my off-campus apartment, and the fridge was full. Back in my childhood bedroom, with posters I hadn't looked at since senior year still on the wall, I felt a strange blend of nostalgia and claustrophobia. Jason, my best friend since high school, still lived a few blocks over. We hadn't seen much of each other during the school year, different colleges, different states, but we picked up where we left off, like always. Late-night drives, shared playlists, burgers from Ray's Diner. One Saturday, his family hosted a small cookout, nothing huge, just some neighbors, his mom's coworkers, and a handful of Jason's friends. I showed up a little after 5, bringing a 6-pack and zero expectations. I figured we'd hang out, talk about dumb high school memories, maybe toss a football around. I didn't expect to see her. Claire, Jason's aunt. She wasn't supposed to be there, at least, not in my mind. The last time I'd seen her, I was 17. She'd visited for Thanksgiving that year, quiet, polite, the kind of adult who smiled too much and asked if you were keeping up with school. She lived out of state then, married, no kids. Now she was here, standing at the edge of the patio, drink in hand, dressed in jeans and a sleeveless black top, her hair pulled back loosely, a pair of sunglasses resting on her head like she forgot they were there. At first, I wasn't even sure it was her. She looked different. Older, yes, but not in the way that people age. More like someone who'd stopped pretending. There was something quieter about her, more grounded. Her eyes scanned the backyard without expectation, like she was somewhere else entirely. Jason nudged me. "Aunt Claire's back in town. She's renting my mom's old house, the one near Mill Creek." I nodded, trying to play it cool. "What happened to?" "I mean, is she divorced?" he said simply, popping the tab on his soda. "Moved back a few months ago. She doesn't talk about it." The evening unfolded in slow motion. Jason and I caught up with a few friends from high school. There was a grill going, some 90s playlist buzzing through the speakers, kids chasing each other barefoot across the grass. But every now and then my eyes drifted back to Claire. It wasn't even attraction at first, just curiosity. She didn't fit into the scene the way everyone else did. While other adults mingled and joked about mortgages and traffic, she kept a slight distance. Laughing sometimes. Listening more. At one point, I found myself alone at the drinks table, pouring lemonade over ice. "Do you always water it down?" a voice asked behind me. I turned. It was her. Claire. Closer than before. She smiled slightly, gesturing toward the glass in my hand. "I just like less sugar," I mumbled. "Smart. That stuff could strip paint off a car." I chuckled, nodding. She reached for a can of sparkling water, popped it open, and leaned casually against the table. We stood there for a moment, watching Jason struggle to light the grill. "You're Noah, right?" she asked. I blinked. "Yeah. You used to come over all the time. You were the one who broke the basement window." I laughed. "Technically, Jason broke it. I just happened to be holding the bat." Her laugh was soft, but real. And in that small sound, something shifted. We made a little more small talk about college, about the heat, about how fast everyone seemed to grow up when you weren't paying attention. She wasn't overly warm, not trying to mother me or lecture me about my future. It felt more like level ground. Two people talking, not adult and kid. Just people. Later, as the sky dimmed and the string lights clicked on, I saw her sitting alone on one of the lawn chairs near the back fence. Everyone else had migrated closer to the fire pit, swapping stories and eating grilled corn on paper plates. But Claire sat apart, sipping slowly from her cup, eyes half focused on the trees swaying behind the fence line. I stood near Jason, pretending to laugh at a joke I didn't hear. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. But my mind was already somewhere else. She looked peaceful but not content. like someone who knew how to appear calm even when something inside refused to settle. I wasn't sure why I noticed that. Maybe because I knew what that felt like. I left early that night, just after 10. Said goodbye to Jason, waved at his mom, and headed toward the driveway. I passed Claire sitting on the front steps, flipping through something on her phone. Heading out, she asked, "Yeah, got work tomorrow?" She looked up. "Hardware store, right?" I smiled. "Yeah, tools and paint and oddly specific screws." She smirked. "Sounds thrilling." "Beyond thrilling," I said. "You'd be amazed how passionate people get about drill bits." She laughed again, quiet, amused. I hesitated. "Nice seeing you again," I said. Her eyes met mine. "You too, Noah." There was something in her voice. Not flirtatious. Not loaded. Just open. Like an invitation to keep talking. Or maybe to come back. But I didn't. I got in my car and drove home, windows down, warm wind in my hair. That night, I lay awake longer than usual. The ceiling fan hummed. My sheets were twisted from the heat. I kept thinking about that moment by the drinks table. The way she said my name. The softness of her voice, low and husky like someone who'd whispered too many secrets to herself. I told myself it was nothing. She was my friend's aunt. She was in her 40s. She had a life, a past, 1,000 stories I'd never be part of. And yet, that one glance, that one moment where the noise faded and it was just us, wouldn't leave me alone. And I had no idea why. 3 days passed before I saw her again. It was a Tuesday and the heat hadn't let up. The kind of air that felt like it clung to your skin even in the shade. I just finished my shift at the hardware store and was sitting in the parking lot, debating whether to grab dinner or just collapse at home when my phone buzzed. "Jason." "Hey, random, Claire needs help moving some boxes. You free?" I stared at the screen, heart giving a traitorous thump. A second later, another message. "Jason." I told her you work at the store. She figured you could help with some shelves too. I typed back before I could overthink it. "Me?" "Yeah. Just finished up. What's the address?" A minute later, I had it. It was that old bungalow off Mill Creek, the one Jason's mom had inherited from their grandparents. Claire had moved in after her divorce. Quiet neighborhood, tree-lined street, porch swing lazily in the summer breeze. I pulled up 20 minutes later. Claire answered the door barefoot, wearing gray joggers and a plain navy tank top, a light sheen of sweat on her neck. Her hair was pulled up in a loose bun, and her expression when she saw me was a mix of surprise and something else, something softer. "I thought you might flake," she said, stepping back to let me in. I smiled. "Never." Inside, the place was neat but lived in. Stacks of books on the coffee table, a ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead, windows cracked to let in the breeze. A few open boxes lined the hallway. "I just moved the last of my things from storage," she said, leading me toward the spare room. I didn't realize how much junk I'd held onto. I followed her inside and began unpacking. It wasn't much, some books, a few framed photos, an old stereo. She stayed nearby, unwrapping plates and humming quietly under her breath. The radio was on low in the background, some indie folk song playing with melancholy chords. After about 30 minutes, she handed me a glass of iced tea. "Break time," she said, nodding toward the porch. We stepped outside. The late afternoon sun was mellow now, casting long shadows across the yard. She sat on the swing and I took the chair across from her. "Thanks for helping," she said after a while. "No problem. Honestly, it's nice to do something other than talk about drill bits and paint samples." She chuckled. "You always were good at keeping things light." I took a sip of tea. It was lemony, faintly sweet. That's a nice way of saying I talk too much. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You were just easy to be around," she said. "Back when everything felt heavier." I tilted my head. "Back when?" She glanced at me, then looked away. "During my divorce. I'd come visit my sister, and you and Jason would be goofing off in the basement. It was nice, normal, like a window into a simpler life." Her voice trailed off and the air between us settled into something quieter. I hadn't known that. I remembered her visiting but never considered what she was escaping. I'd been too wrapped up in my own teenage world, school, football practice, crushes that never went anywhere. Did it feel like everything changed after that? I asked, not entirely sure where the question came from. She looked surprised. Yes, she said softly. It did. I lost a house, a marriage, a rhythm I'd built my life around. It's like the ground shifted and no one else noticed. I didn't speak. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound hollow. She went on. People always tell you that starting over is brave. But it's not. Not really. It's just what you do when staying feels worse. We sat in silence for a while. The cicadas buzzed in the trees. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower started up. You ever feel like that? She asked suddenly. Like you're living in someone else's version of your life? I thought about it. Sometimes, I said. Like when I go back to school and pretend I have everything figured out. Or when I'm with people who knew me years ago and I don't know how to be anything but the version they remember. Claire nodded slowly, I still on the porch railing. That's the worst part, she said. Being seen, but not really seen. We sat there, two people separated by years, but somehow meeting in the same space. She looked at me again. Really looked. And for a moment, something passed between us, not romantic, not inappropriate, just real. A connection built on shared weight, on unsaid things. I should get going, I said quietly, standing. She didn't argue. Just followed me to the door. Thanks again, she said, resting her hand lightly on the frame. Anytime. I started to step outside when her voice stopped me. Noah. I turned. Would you maybe want to come by sometime? Just to talk. Not about boxes. Just talk. I swallowed. Yeah. I'd like that. She smiled, not wide, but genuine. Me too. And then I was in my car, driving home with the windows down again. But this time, the wind felt different. The evening felt different. And when I closed my eyes that night, it wasn't the boxes I remembered, or the iced tea, or even the way her laugh lingered. It was her voice. Low. Honest. Vulnerable. You ever feel like that? And the way she asked me to stay without saying the words. I didn't go back right away. Not because I didn't want to, I did. But because something about that evening had made the air between us feel heavier. Not uncomfortable. Not wrong. Just charged. Like walking across a rug in socks and reaching for a doorknob. 2 days later, Jason called to say he'd left his wireless headphones at Claire's. I was over there dropping off some chairs, he said. Think I left them on the kitchen counter. You mind grabbing them if you're nearby? I told him sure. But the moment I hung up, I knew this wasn't just a favor. I could have made an excuse. Could have told him to grab them himself. But part of me had been waiting for any excuse to go back. It was late afternoon again when I parked in front of Claire's house. The sunlight was slanting through the trees, streaking the sidewalk with golden patterns. Her car was in the driveway and the windows were open just enough for a breeze. I knocked once. The door opened before I could raise my hand a second time. Claire stood there barefoot again, this time in soft black leggings and a loose white t-shirt knotted at the waist. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, wisps escaping around her ears. Her eyes lit up, surprised, maybe, but not displeased. Noah, she said, almost smiling. I wasn't expecting company. I scratched the back of my neck. Jason left his headphones here. Said I could swing by. She nodded and stepped back, holding the door open. Come in. They're on the counter. The house smelled faintly like citrus and something warm baked, maybe. Banana bread? As I stepped into the kitchen, she followed behind and opened a drawer. I just made tea, she said. Want some? Sure, I said, voice too quick. She poured from a ceramic pot into mismatched mugs, hers with a faded blue glaze, mine with a chipped rim and a floral pattern. It felt strangely intimate. We took our mugs to the living room. The sunlight reached halfway across the floor now, turning everything it touched into shades of gold. She sat on the couch, one leg tucked under her. I took the chair across from her. We talked. About nothing at first. Books. The weather. A movie she'd watched the night before that she said was too neat to feel real. Then she asked, "You ever think about the first time someone saw you differently?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" She stared into her tea. "Like when you realized someone wasn't seeing the version of you they're supposed to see. When they stopped looking at you as just a student. Or a nephew. Or a neighbor's kid." I hesitated, then said, "Yeah, I think about that." Her eyes met mine. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if we were talking about the same thing. Or if we absolutely were. Outside, clouds began to gather, soft and slow, a summer storm creeping in without a sound. The light dimmed by degrees. She stood suddenly. "I should close the windows." I followed her out of habit, helping her slide them shut. The wind was picking up, rustling the trees in long shivers. When we finished, she paused near the back door, staring out into the yard. "You can stay until it passes if you want," she said. "I hate the idea of you driving in this." I nodded, even though the rain hadn't started yet. We returned to the living room. This time, I didn't sit in the chair. I sat on the couch, next to her. Not close, not touching, but closer than before. She pulled her legs up, arms wrapped loosely around her knees. The room was quiet except for the faint creak of the ceiling fan. "I was married for 10 years, she said softly, eyes on the wall across from us. "Most people think the hardest part is the end. But it's not. It's the middle, when everything gets quiet and no one notices. When you go from being someone's beginning to just someone in their way." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't try to fix it. I just sat there, with her, in the quiet. The first drops hit the window, fat, spaced out. Then more. A sudden sweep of sound as the rain came all at once. Claire stood again. I always loved storms. She walked to the kitchen and dimmed the lights, letting the gray outside take over the space. Then she returned and sat beside me again, closer this time. Her arm brushed mine. She didn't move. Neither did I. The silence was different now. Not awkward. Not empty. Full. Like a pause in music where the next note could change everything. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, turning slightly toward me. "For what?" "For being so open. I don't usually talk like this." "It's okay," I said. "You can." Her eyes searched mine. "You ever feel like someone finally sees you?" she asked. I swallowed. "I do now." We were still for a long moment, and then slowly she reached out, brushing her fingers against mine. Barely there. A suggestion more than a touch. My breath caught. The storm outside built louder. Inside, everything felt still. Then she whispered, "I shouldn't." I turned toward her. She didn't finish the sentence. Because I kissed her. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't wild or desperate. It was soft. Curious. Her lips were warm, tentative, like she was afraid of what it would mean if she kissed back and more afraid of what it would mean if she didn't. She did. Her hand touched my jaw, light as breath, and her mouth moved against mine with a kind of slow ache. Not rushed. Not rehearsed. Just real. When we pulled back, our foreheads rested against each other. Neither of us spoke. Because neither of us knew what this was yet. But it was something. She pulled away gently and stood, her eyes unreadable. "I should make more tea," she said. But her voice trembled slightly, not from fear, not from regret. From whatever it was we just shared. I nodded. She disappeared into the kitchen. And I sat there, trying to remember how to breathe. I didn't stay long after that. Claire came back with the tea, set it on the coffee table, and we talked for a little while about nothing important. About the rain. About the neighbor's broken fence. About how time had a way of rushing forward when you weren't watching. But there was something under the words. A current we were both aware of, pretending not to feel. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door, holding the mug with both hands like she needed something to hold onto. Outside, the storm had softened, rain tapering to a whisper. She looked at me before I stepped out. Her voice was quiet. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not making it weird. For being kind." I nodded, unsure what to say. Then she added, "I'll see you around." And just like that, I was back in my car, the windshield speckled with fading rain, the engine humming low under the weight of everything that had just happened and everything that hadn't. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of guilt. Not exactly. But because something in me had changed and I didn't know what to do with it. Claire wasn't just Jason's aunt anymore. She wasn't just a familiar adult from childhood memories. She wasn't even just a woman I found unexpectedly beautiful. She had become something else entirely. A mirror. A spark. A secret I hadn't realized I was keeping even from myself. I didn't text her the next day. Or the one after that. I went to work. Ate dinner alone. Went on long walks just to burn through whatever this restlessness was inside me. And all the while, I replayed that moment on the couch, the kiss, the breathless pause, the look in her eyes like she was standing on the edge of a cliff and I had somehow reached out to meet her there. Jason didn't say anything. He wouldn't have known. But every time he mentioned his aunt just in passing, I felt like a fraud. Like I was walking around with a secret too delicate to share and too loud to ignore. It was Saturday morning when her name lit up my phone. Claire. "Hey, sorry to bother you." My backyard gate came off the hinge. "You know anything about that kind of thing?" I stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. "Me. I can take a look. Home now." "Claire." "Yeah. Just me here." I read that last sentence twice. Then got in the car. She answered the door with her hair still damp from a shower, a soft blue sweatshirt hanging off one shoulder, and leggings that clung to her like second skin. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her skin glowed with that post-shower warmth, and her eyes, tired but clear, landed on mine like she'd been expecting something more than just help with a gate. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Always," I replied. The gate, as it turned out, had mostly come loose from one screw. It took all of 10 minutes to fix. She stood nearby while I worked, arms folded over her chest, watching in silence. "Looks good as new," I said, dusting my hands on my jeans. She smiled faintly. "You're handy." Jason never had the patience. Jason never liked to read instructions. She laughed, a low, throatier sound than I remembered from the other night. "I owe you something," she said as we walked back toward the house. "Coffee? Food?" "I'm good," I said. She stopped on the porch steps and turned to me. "Then stay anyway." Just like that. No hesitation this time. No indirect invitation disguised as politeness. Stay. Inside, the house was quiet again, that lived-in kind of quiet where you could hear the floorboards creak when you moved and the refrigerator humming like a heartbeat. She poured 2 glasses of water and handed me one, then leaned against the counter and studied me. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "About the other night." I nodded. "Me too. I didn't plan it," she said. "I know. It wasn't a test. Or a game. I just... In that moment, I didn't want to be alone. And you felt safe. Those words, 'you felt safe,' landed like a stone in my chest. Not heavy, but solid. Real. I felt the same way," I said. She looked at me for a long time. "I've done everything I was supposed to," she said. "The marriage, the house, the safe career. I followed all the rules. And still, I ended up alone." Her voice didn't break, but it wavered just enough. "And now," she continued, "I find myself wanting something I'm not supposed to want. Someone I'm not supposed to want." My pulse quickened. "Do you regret it?" I asked. "No," she said almost immediately. "That's the part that scares me." We were standing inches apart now. I could feel the warmth of her skin, the rise and fall of her breath. She set her glass down and reached for my hand. Slowly, deliberately, like she needed permission and was offering hers in return. "I know this can't be simple," she said. "I know what it looks like. So do I. But I can't pretend that didn't mean something." Me neither. We stood in the stillness of that truth. No labels, No plan, just truth. She led me to the living room again. We sat side by side on the couch, our fingers laced together like they'd been waiting to fit. The television was off. The lights were dim. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm tired," she said. "Want me to go?" "No," she whispered. "That's not what I meant." Her fingers tightened slightly. "Stay," she said again. And this time I didn't hesitate. We didn't rush anything. That night unfolded the way storms do when you're not afraid of getting wet. Slowly, fully, honestly. Claire sat close to me on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, one hand still laced with mine. We talked a little, then we didn't, and somehow the silence between us felt like its own kind of conversation. It didn't demand anything. It just was. She asked if I wanted tea. I said yes, even though I didn't. Not because I needed the drink, but because I needed the moment. The excuse to stay longer. The shared weight of simple things. When she returned, the lights were lower, the sky outside deep navy. We sat facing each other now, closer than before. She handed me the mug, and then softly, "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Are you?" Her voice caught a little. I've never been more scared of something that felt so calm. I set the mug down and leaned forward. This time our kiss wasn't tentative. It was slow but certain, not a question but an answer. Her hands found my shoulders, then my face. Mine settled on her waist, then her back, learning the curve of her with reverence. We didn't say much after that. We didn't need to. There's a language people speak when they've been silent for too long, when the world has only ever asked them to hold themselves together, but never to let themselves unravel. She let herself unravel that night. So did I. When we moved upstairs, the house changed. Not its layout, not the rooms, but its meaning. Her bedroom door creaked open, the one that had always been off limits when I was a kid. The place I'd passed 100 times without thinking. Now it felt like sacred ground. Claire pulled me in gently. She didn't lead. She didn't follow. We moved together, like we both understood this wasn't about lust or fantasy. It was about being seen, really seen. We undressed without hesitation, but also without urgency. Every inch was a kind of trust. Every touch said, "I know this can't last forever, but I want it to be real while it's here." There was no music, no dramatic soundtrack, just breath and heartbeats and rain starting up again against the windows. Later, we lay tangled in warm sheets, her head on my chest, her fingers tracing small circles into my skin. "I don't know what this is," she whispered. "Neither do I," I admitted. She tilted her head, looking up at me. "But it's not nothing," she said. "No," I said. "It's not." We fell asleep like that, not worried about labels or logic, just holding on to a truth that didn't need explaining. The next morning was quiet. Golden light spilled through the windows in soft lines, catching in her hair, her lashes, the white sheet draped over her shoulder. She was already awake when I opened my eyes, just lying there watching me like she was memorizing the moment. "Morning," I said. Her lips curled into the faintest smile. "Hey." I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. There was no rush to get dressed. No awkward scramble. Just slow movement. Coffee brewing. The smell of toast. Her old hoodie thrown over my shoulders as I leaned in the doorway, watching her butter slices of bread like this was the most normal morning in the world. For a second, I imagined this could last. That it didn't need to be secret or complicated. That we could go on like this slow, hidden real. But of course, it couldn't. Claire turned to me, coffee in hand. "I've been thinking." I nodded. I knew what came next. "We can't tell Jason." Of course not. This isn't something people will understand. I wanted to say I don't care what people think. But I knew she did. Because this wasn't just about me and her. It was about the lines we'd both crossed. The ones society drew. The ones people like to believe are permanent. Still, I looked her in the eyes. I don't regret it, I said. Neither do I, she replied, almost in a whisper. Over the next few weeks, we didn't pretend it didn't happen. But we didn't talk about it out loud either. There were stolen moments, a hand brushing mine when no one was looking, an accidental glance held too long across the farmer's market, a shared look when I dropped off something Jason had forgotten. One night, we sat in her living room again, a movie flickering soundlessly in the background. I was lying back against the armrest, she was nestled under my arm. She whispered, "You know this can't last." I looked down at her. "I know. But that doesn't mean it didn't matter." I nodded. "It still matters." She pressed her face into my chest. I kissed the top of her head. And we sat like that in the quiet knowledge that some things aren't meant to be permanent, only unforgettable. Eventually, life would move forward. I'd go back to school. She'd go on with her new chapter. There would be other people, other moments. But this, the quiet backyard evenings, the rainy afternoons, the softness in her eyes when she let herself be vulnerable, this would stay with me. Not as something forbidden, but as something true. People say the most dangerous thing is wanting what you can't have. But sometimes the more dangerous thing is being seen by someone who sees all of you and doesn't flinch. Claire did that for me. And for one fleeting summer, I did the same for her. And no one can take that away. Not Jason. Not time. Not even reality. Because some moments are too real to forget. And some people, no matter how brief their presence, leave a mark that never fades. She was never just Jason's aunt. She was the woman who reminded me who I was. And for that, I'll always be hers, even if only in memory.